Yeah, and
Okay, good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, January 26th at 6 p.m., and I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order and ask that we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Willis,
At present.
Miss Moore,
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez, Miss Lilgy, Mr. Lopez, Dr. Body, Dr. Kavanaugh, Mr. Richardson,
Present.
Miss Williams. Quorum is present.
Thank you. And I am aware that Dr. Kavanaugh and Dr. Body will not be able to join us this evening. And I do want to take a moment at the beginning of this meeting to welcome our new board assistant, Miss Lori Brandon, over here. So this is a new face for folks who are joining us. Most importantly, that's the face and name you want to remember if you want to make public comment, because she's going to take your public comment cards. All right, next on the agenda, check to see if there's any additions to the agenda, which there are none, which brings us on to public comment on agenda items. Looks like we have one. Thank you. Okay. Looks like we have two individuals that would like to make comment on an agenda item. I'm going to call you forward to the podium here. Please note that you have 3 minutes to address the board, and the board does not typically respond to public comment. I would first like to welcome Angela Mattering. I'm sorry. Thank you.
My husband's Filipino. I went from Taylor to Mattering, so it's not just you that pronounces
And
it.
if I could have you stand up.
sorry.
No problem.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Angela Mattering, as you know, and I'm here as a mom, soon to be mom of two in March. And really, I want to voice my frustration about waste, specifically taxpayer waste, as shown in the consent agenda. There's a recommendation there in your consent agenda to select a company to renovate our Averill and Lyon schools. It's a bid that's $40,000 more than the other company, and it doesn't appear to be there's any reason why. I don't know if you guys can explain that, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. There also appears to be, no other reason for all of the other bids. They all took the lowest bid except for that one. So I was just hoping to get some more explanation and wondering why, because $40,000 might not seem like a lot when, you're passing millages for millions of dollars, but it's a lot to the average person, the average LSD family. And our community loves and supports our schools. I mean, that's why we voted on that millage back in May. And we expect LSD and the members of the school board to be responsible stewards of that money. Like I said, it's a small fortune to an LSD family, and I just want to encourage all the board members here today to think about how many hot lunches $40,000 could pay for, or bonuses for teachers that amount of $40,000 that are overworked. So hopefully just changing that perspective, you can maybe dig into that, look into that a little bit deeper, because $40,000 is a lot of money. So thank you for your consideration. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. I would now like to welcome Andy Weisbrot. Thank you.
That's way closer than most people. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I was here Monday to talk to the committee about the same topic. I'm with Plume Mechanical. We were the low bid on the mechanical for Lyons and Averill. I want to comment on that briefly. The committee recommended that the district pay $40,000 more than the low bid because, quote, Plume Service Company's bid was not per plans and specs, end quote. This is an incorrect statement. I was told after a committee meeting this past Monday that this specifically referred to our ACR refrigeration piping. Our proposal included annealed ACR tubing, which is exactly what the specifications required for the project. At our post-bid meeting, the engineer stated a preference for drawn copper, which is hard pipe. We were happy to make that change. Total cost to us was $1,000. It's insignificant really to us, and there was no additional cost to the school. So not really sure how that results in us not being the awarded contractor for that. I know that the agenda states that if any board member wishes to have further discussion or vote separately on any item on the consent agenda, that this request can be made prior to a motion for approval. If the consent agenda is approved as it stands, 40,000 taxpayer dollars would be wasted for no additional benefit to the school district or its taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are on to our presentations, which I believe I'm going to be inviting Mr. Lang to present on budget amendment number 1.
Good evening, and as you can see, I have a compadre with me. So there'll be some information in the budget amendment that Christina will talk about to explain some further information that is more in her realm than my realm. So as far as just the numbers, she talks some of the details behind some of that has to do with some staffing. So just normally we do this reminder context. We have 2 board members, so I'll go into a little bit more detail. Mr. Richardson got a little preview last night with our board finance committee meeting and explained some more there. But just as a reminder for everybody, we have to have, the board has to approve a budget by state law by the end of June for the current year. So at that time, there's a lot of unknowns we don't have information on, or not complete information, or just waiting for information. Some of it is, what we project in enrollment and what then our final enrollment is after count. and then what the state, excuse me, the state aid gives us in our foundational allowance. Since the state has their fiscal year ends in September, a lot of times they're waiting up until that last minute to actually finish up their budget and say, here's what we're giving to schools. So when we present the budget in June, we give our best estimate of what we think enrollment's going to be and then what that foundation allowance is going to be. So for the current year, we budgeted at 9,417 students, or FTE is actually what it is, and Christina could go on and on about student versus FTE count, but that's a topic for a different day. And the budget for per pupil was to an increase of $400 per pupil over last year, $9,100 total for this year, and the state ended up awarding $9,150, so it was a little bit more than what we budgeted. Then also because our audit is taking place after the end of the fiscal year, those numbers, our financial statements change a little bit after our final budget adoption or amendment and then adoption at the end of June, and how those are reflected in that. So we'll go over some of those numbers here coming up. Oh, one thing it was noted at the bottom there that as the finance office is working on the budget amendments, we kind of had to put a kind of a stop date of, well, numbers and figures as of this date so that they're not constantly changing as we get up to this point. So it was noted in the last slide there that these numbers and figures are all representative as of the end of November. So we're obviously about 6-7 weeks past that. So some things have also changed since then, but just so you know, that's as reflected of then. So in the approved budget for this year, we were expecting to use about $10 million in fund balance. Our fund balance at the end of, for our final budget amendment last year, we're expecting to be about $44 million, using about $10 million of that this year down to $34 million. And then with the audit, it reduced our projected then fund balance by that $665,000. So down to about $33 million. Still very healthy for our district compared to what we have been in prior years, but just wanted to point that out. And then so what we'll look at the next slides is the changes in from the adopted budget in June to what we're looking at now. Increase in revenue, mainly due to the increase in per pupil and the increase in students for about $5.5 million. Decreases in staffing, which mainly has to do with open positions. We budget at the beginning of the year for every position to be filled the entire year. So as the year goes on, if positions aren't filled, we reduce that budget to kind of match that flow there. And then some increases to discretionary costs, some program investments we've done to help support the schools and the programs, and that's another $9.4 million in expenses. So the net change from what the original $10 million fund balance use was about $2.6 million. So right now we're projecting about $7.3 million in fund balance use. So going to about $36 million at the end of the fiscal year. So the revenue changes, lots of different factors go into it. The local revenue is primarily property taxes. Property tax values are still going up. So as we get updated figures from the cities and townships in the county, they update those figures, and those are reflected mainly in what's that. So there's also some interest that we've done some investments that we've talked about. So we've gotten some interest revenue that was more than what we had originally budgeted. And then the USF revenues, that's technology rebates that we get for that. County special ed education, we get revenues, of course, from the ISD in the county mainly for special ed reimbursements. And then the state funding, again, like I noted, we were originally budgeted at $400 per pupil. It actually ended up being $450. And the blended enrollment is the 97.4862, and that's FTE and students. So what that is the student count that goes into how much per pupil funding we get is 90% of our fall count and then 10% of our prior spring count. So our actual FTE count right now is not that 97.48. It's that blend of those two figures there. And then a little bit of decrease in the food service indirect. So minor, but notable to put in there. So that's that increase in revenues there that we have there. On the cost adjustments, again, the staff savings due to open positions as of November, we had a little over 171 FTE open positions. So a lot of open positions, and that reflected savings of 6.5 million. So the program investments we do to help offset that, we had some carryover budgets, which we normally haven't done in the past. So if schools and departments didn't use some of their general fund budget last year, this was the first year we allowed them to use that again this year. We kind of noted how much they had at the end of last year, gave that to them this year on top of their normal per pupil discretionary funds that they get for the schools. And we invested in, we had to renew our Go Math math curriculum contract because it expired the prior year, so we had to renew that. Property tax abatement were mainly that had to do with timing of last year. The city of Lansing overpaid us by like 1.6 million. Errors on theirs end as far as how they were inputting data into their sorry, it's the shock and awe. Yes. So it's they've had a lot of turnover in the city of Lansing treasurer's office, and a lot of mistakes have been made, and we just have to roll with what the figures they input and how that flows into our revenues. Our auditors looked at it, I questioned it out, so it was about 1.6 million we had to pay back this year. But because we get that offset in some state aid, in part of our state aid, we kind of had that set aside because we knew we were going to get those funds back in the state aid once we started receiving state aid again this year. Substitute teachers, again, you have open positions, you need subs. So we had to increase our budget a little bit based on that. And then we also have some contracted services that can go towards helping support the schools with a lot of those positions and other programs. The program savings, we no longer participate with Ingham Academy. So that has a big savings. And then there's some adjustments in the transportation and tuition costs through the ISD. And that hold harmless shift, that's going into this budget year, we didn't know for sure like all the Title I and 31A funds we were going to get. So if like a school had a 1.0 literacy teacher last year and they weren't able to fully fund it with those grants this year, we allowed to have them to general fund that normally wouldn't use to support that. But after the state passed their budget, we received, I'm looking at Ms. Benavides, was about 2.9 million in 31A funds, additional that weren't expected. So we're able to help offset that in the general fund and shift some of those costs over to 31A and freeze up the funds in the general fund. So on to Ms. Toker and why she is here to talk about kind of that number of open positions and where we are now and some of the things we're doing.
So I saw the responses on some of your faces when we were talking about how many open positions we had. And while that's a large number, I kind of wanted to go over where we're currently at now. So John stated, this report was originally made as of November 30th. Those are the numbers. As of today, you can see our grand total down there at the bottom. We're at 166.7. So we have made some progress since November with having a net positive in hiring. I wanted to kind of go over what these positions are so you guys have more of an understanding and aren't thinking, hey, we have 171 classroom teacher positions open. So we do in our pre-K through 3 schools, we do have 4 teacher positions open. I can state that 3 of those are recent positions. So talking about towards the end of last year with retirements, resignations. And then the PK3 total, you're 9.9. So that's when we start talking about assistants, lunchroom assistants, additional supports kind of in the school that are based solely in that school. Our middle years teachers program, so this is going to be our 4-7s, our K8, K6, K7s programs. We have 24 teacher openings there. So you'll notice that is our highest opening, and I'll kind of go over here in a minute what we're doing to help support that and support the principals and the students and the other staff in those buildings to help offset those openings. Middle years totals 55.8. Again, so similar as before, we're talking about lunch assistants, classroom assistants. And in that 55.8, I'll kind of dip into it now, but the notes on the side, we've added additional positions outside of classroom teachers to try to help support the openings. So we've added additional assistance positions at most of our 4-6s, 16 of them actually. So 16 of that 55 right off the tap are recent positions we've posted to try to bring in additional classroom assistants. We've also posted 3 deans of students, and we actually just hired one at Mount Hope. And so we're trying to bring in additional positions to support. So if those classroom teaching positions in the 24 were filled, we wouldn't have those other 19 positions necessarily there. So it almost seems like a double count, right, if we had those positions filled. High school teachers, 15. Again, several of those are recent, towards the end of, before the end of the year. High school total 17.4. So we have most of our ancillary staff in the schools filled, only 2.4, or in the high schools, excuse me, filled, only 2.4 not. Special education, this is a large number at 58.8. I know we've talked about this before, special education staffing, and how we're in need of that. And that's kind of a thing that's around here. It's around the state. It's around the nation, very much in high demand. And I kind of wanted to break that down for you guys. So for assistance out of special education, so these are our additional classroom teaching assistants. We have 27.8 FTE there. And notable in those two are 9 classroom for ASD assistants and 5 in our SXI, which is a program that we run out of our Beekman Center. And then also out of that number, we have 31 FTE in the LSEA unit, so our teachers unit. 12 of them are resource rooms, 15 are related services like psychologists, social workers, OT, PT, 1 early childhood teacher, 1 ASD teacher, 1 emotional impairment teacher, and 1 deaf and hard of hearing teacher. So just to give you guys an understanding of how that 58 breaks down, it's around half of assistance, around half related services, resource room, that kind of thing. And then we have our departmental school support. So these are coded more to central offices. So they might be coded to central offices, but they're staff that are hired to support the school. So if we think through our bilingual department under Mr. Keck, we have bilingual assistants, we have additional staff out of the Office of School Culture, health support, mental health support. So they're coded to central offices, but they do support the schools, and we have 24 openings there. So some of the things that we're doing, obviously, to address these, we're continuing to explore. We already have several, well over 100 people that we've hired in the district that are part of an alternative certification program. So these are people that are working towards becoming a teacher, and we're helping support them through our REAP grant to receive an alternative certification and become a teacher. We're also enrolling in several college and university job fairs to participate in that over the next 3 months. So we'll be out and about at several local universities, and then we're sprawling outside of the state also to go to universities and colleges out of state. We had a virtual job fair last week. We had 28 people come to the job fair, and we gave out 10 offers. So we're also continuing to do some of these, and these are offers for assistants, classroom teachers, all different types of positions. We're doing a heavy recruitment with MSU interns, thanks to Mr. Keck. We've hosted 2 meetings now with our MSU interns to help recruit them into the program and keep them here with us, and that's going very well. We also are doing an international teacher recruitment. So we're reaching out to some of our neighboring countries who have amazing teacher programs, and we have lots of people that want to come into the U.S. to teach, and so we're working on that as well. And we're just basically trying to diversify our approach to recruitment and not going, the same route. That's just not working anymore, as we've seen kind of what's going on in the education field over the last several years. We're trying anything and everything that, we can think of to recruit new teachers and also retain them. So that's also, we're working on retention programs. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on?
Vice President Moore?
So excited. Oh, I'm sorry. So excited about hearing about the recruitment efforts, because I was in my notes. Got a question for you. You mentioned that you all will be traveling out of state. Are we going to HBCUs to recruit? All right.
Yep.
Central State University, not that far. Xenia, Ohio. I went there. Murat, I did.
So what's
Yes, I
great
am.
is our new director of human resources worked in Xenia, Ohio. So
You-
he is very
Xenia,
familiar.
yes,
So yes, yep.
Right across the street is Wilberforce. I
Yeah.
need us to be there. No, but I'm glad to hear that because of the population of our students.
Absolutely.
You're awesome. Thank you. I had another question, I think. Incentives. What are our incentives to get the teachers here?
Sure. So we've got a few things so monetarily, obviously we've got a few things going on. So through our REAP program, we actually have several incentives to bring on teachers in hard to fill positions and in schools where it's actually hard to fill positions just in those schools. So through the REAP grant, we're allowed to offer certain types of stipends through that. And it's also a retention effort as well. There are stipends also being offered to our teachers who already are here through that grant. So it's both a recruitment and a retention. We've also recently hired 2 positions solely for recruitment and retention. So this is a very big focus and a very important focus for us. And these are meant to be long-term positions to sustain this for forever so that we're not having such a large ebb and flow. So those people are looking at things as working with apartment complexes about discounted rates for rent to bring in people into the area, or just about housing in general and trying to find open spaces, getting discounts and having cards for discounts at local restaurants, gyms, those types of things solely for just being a Lansing School District employee. So those are just some kind of out of the box things that we're trying to think like what will bring people here and what will keep them here. And also just letting them know about all of the really cool things we have in Lansing that I think a lot of people outside of Lansing don't know about. So we've been taking them on tours. We've partnered with Kelly Dean. We've taken new teachers on tours through the city to show them different parts of the city, restaurants, event spaces, where to go and have fun. So we're just trying to do lots of different things.
Thank you. I love thinking out of the box. That's good.
Thank you. Dr. Rodriguez?
Thank you very much. And if I hope that all these efforts to recruit more teachers will end the crisis. But we are having already more than 1 year or half a year in that problem. And I know that we had to have so many number of the students per teacher. Is any conversation, and I am not in favor to put more students and teachers, but maybe we had to be thinking of how we put more students and support that teacher and additional people there. And especially when we have 58 teachers in special ed, and I know they only have 8 students, then how other alternatives we can work with the present teachers and the union to see how we can solve the problem.
Thank you.
Going on in that or just forget
Oh,
it?
absolutely. So we're always in conversations with Mr. Alberts, the president of the LSEA union, and trying to figure out like what are some ways, because he is well aware and very supportive of helping us recruit teachers. In fact, we have a recruitment team and he's on the recruitment team in the district. So we are talking about those kinds of things. We definitely tried to stick to a goal of 25-1 in the classroom, but when we talk about adding more positions like assistants, that might be something that we could look into about having additional students in a classroom. Although like you, I wouldn't want to necessarily go there. But if we have the assistants positions in the rooms, you would still then have more adults to a student ratio in a classroom all day. So
I think maybe we had to be thinking a different distribution of the students. Some classes had 40 students, like physical education.
yes.
Another student only had 8. Then distribution of the students, they will benefit them. By having the students without teachers, we had to think out of the box.
And I do want to state too, the openings that we have, quite a bit of them. We have on average around a 92% fill rate with substitute teachers, and a large portion of those are long-term substitutes that have taken these positions. And we're also expanding our guest teacher program, which I know we talked about last board meeting or a couple board meetings ago, where we hire our own permanent substitute teachers. So although we have the openings, those are because we haven't filled them with a full-time certified teacher yet. We have had a long-term substitute teacher in those classrooms for a majority of the year.
Well, as a board member, I had to be satisfied with the work you are doing. I am not satisfied with what the situation that we have,
Of course.
but it's 2 different things. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lopez?
Thank you. Just a quick question. I probably didn't hear it well, but can you tell me on the audited fund balance decrease of 665.45, 455, where was, where did the decrease happen?
Well, it's a lot of areas, because what you're talking about was for when we did our final budget amendment in, probably would have been the beginning of June. That's where we had that projected of 34 million or whatever it was. But then you have like 60 days for invoices to come in. So it's just those payments and stuff like that come in through the rest of the year that may not have been budgeted, or now we're truing up to what the actual expenditures were at the end of the year. So through June 30th, but expenses paid through basically the end of August. So there's usually some fluctuation up and down a little bit here and there. I mean, the 600,000 is probably not unusual. I could look at what it was in the prior years as far as from the final budget amendment to what the actual audited statements are. But it's on what is our general fund budget, 120 million, or, it's not that significant amount. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. That's a lot of money, but as far as there's so many different accounts that go into it and factors go into it, but it's a little bit here,
a little bit there that,
Yeah,
that was
yeah, exactly.
flux
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
added to that amount of money. Okay.
Like I said, I mean, I can look at prior years and see what that fluctuation was from final budget amendment to audited statements, and as just like a historical, is that unusually high or low or average? But yeah, there's a lot of different.
So what you're saying, there was no one glaring area
No.
that caused this deficit?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Richardson?
Thank you. For obviously there's an effort to get people to Lansing. For retaining the students down the street that are already here, do we have a relationship with Dr. Gerlando Jackson? He's pretty new to Michigan State, but he's the Dean of Education. Do we have any, or do we know him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm going to point back here to Sergio and Ben, but they both, yes.
Should have known.
Absolutely. I mean, this goes without saying, is that we're so fortunate that Michigan State, which they like to say, and I like to say, is the #1 rated education school in the country. We have been, since the moment I got here, kind of opening our doors to figure out. And in fact, the one thing we could talk about that we were able to do this year was to create the residency program. So they had historically this relationship with Detroit and Chicago. And I said, but we're next door, guys. Like, let's be friends. And they said, you know what, let's make it happen. And so even just this year, we have a residency program with them. We've been talking to MSU for a while. The new dean seems wonderful. We had a talk, maybe last month before Christmas. And we're just really thrilled to work on that. And so our hope is that everybody does their student teaching with us. We keep them all, and then we never have to have these conversations again. So, but I really appreciate you bringing it up, because those relationships, and also with deference to our COO, Central Michigan, as well as a lot of other universities, Michigan's really lucky. We have a lot of great higher ed and education schools. We're trying, but I will say that historically, Lansing School District and some of the higher ed institutions haven't been as tight as they could have been. And so we're really working on that right now. Yeah.
That's okay.
Ms. Roslin? Ms. Williams, sorry.
That's okay. We'll get there. I have a couple of questions. Your recruitment team, is it a reflection of what the population looks like with the students, the families, and everything like that? Because with that being said, a lot of times you can get more people to work with you and come with you as versus going outside within this area. That's my first question.
Sure. So not as reflective as we would like it to be, but I will say that our director of human resources, Mark Manley, actually instituted and created a team in the prior districts he worked in that was to a percentage, if not higher, of having that diversity in there. So that is a focus of that team, is to continue to bring in the diversity that reflects our student population and have them a part of the recruitment and retention.
Okay. My second question along with that, Beekman, it's not my baby, but it is my baby because I have a special needs child. The parents that have these children, have we looked at even training them as assistants to go into the school, offering them some type of employment or something of that nature? And then
Same thing with the normal teachers, going through the community. Hey, we're opening up for assistance. We can help you get the training and certification that you need. We want to make sure that our kids are being taken care of and their families by all means. So are we looking at even just going into the communities, talking to the families and saying, hey, are you interested in working in our district? What can we do to help you become more involved?
Absolutely. So one of the huge things that we continue to push and that we started with at the beginning of the school year, thanks to Ms. Benavides and her team, is speaking with the principals. They know their families the best, and them reaching out to their parents and letting them know what their needs are in that school where their students are at. And we've actually have hired on several parents. We've hired on secretaries. We've hired on lunch assistants. We've hired on classroom assistants. So that's a kind of a continual push. And we feel like while we can from HR or from a central office go out and do these recruitments, which we do through John McGraw and communications and those types of things, the principals have the best and closest relationships and know those families and can help work out schedules and what makes sense for them. So they're continually having conversations with families and just listening to some of those conversations while they're having a kid and noticing, like, maybe there's a need there. I can help fill that need. Let's bring you in and use you at the school. So yes, those conversations are continually happening, and we're using the principals for that.
Okay, and then we talked about MSU being one of our partners. LCC is right down the street. They have a pretty good early childhood program.
Absolutely.
And I know about 5 young people that are getting ready to graduate through that program. So we might need to go back
names.
I'll get
I got you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't leave anybody out when and I know Ben mentioned my alma mater, CMU. That's got a great special education program up there. And so we're really trying to tighten up those relationships, like Ben said, with everybody and anybody, nobody excluded, everybody included, and trying to really build that community with all of them.
And one thing to add about LCC, because I'm really glad you brought that up. Sergio and I met with the president and vice president last year to really try to strengthen that relationship again, because not only are they, right here, but they have wonderful, wonderful students. A lot of them are our former students, and, bringing kids back into their buildings, they know the community and they care about it. So, anybody listening, if you would like to work in the Lansing School District, we would love to see your resume. But yeah, and it will, to be trite about it, it will take this village, right? It is hard. We know across the country hiring is difficult, but the closer we have our relationships with our community, the more they're going to be willing to pitch in. So I really appreciate, really all these questions, but, and of course, I lean on the board too. You are of this community. The community voted for you. If there's any people that you want us to reach out to, let us know. You can see what a great staff we have. All they want to do is to support, but, we don't know everybody. And so the more we can talk about where we can go in the future, the better. So I really appreciate these questions. Thank you.
There was one more thing I just wanted to add really quick. We're actually submitting an application for the Grow Your Own grant through the state of Michigan. And so we're exploring alternative certifications through that, looking at our current assistants, our current teachers. So assistants wanting to get their teacher's license and us helping fund that for them through the grant. And then also any teachers who might want to go for an additional certification and we'll help fund that as well through the grant. So. Sorry, John, I know we kind of derailed there. I know you have one more slide, so.
Just the summary page. Yeah. So again, just summarizing what we already discussed as far as what the adopted budget was back in June and what we are looking at as an amendment for now, and using about 2.7 million was the last fund balance than we originally projected. So that's pretty much it.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. I think they appreciate very much. We can see how money go along with employment and the services to the students. These two departments really should be connected on one, and I think that is what we are here, how we use the money to benefit the students, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from board members? Okay, I have a couple. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Moore.
I did, but I hope I'm not getting in the weeds.
Ask away.
You got us.
Oh, okay. So on page 3, you talked about increase in discretionary cost.
Mhm.
I think I just chopped that word up. And you talked about program investments. Like, what type of programs? Is that in the weeds? Perfect.
No, so the slide 5, kind of, we broke it down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, yep.
Slide 5.
So Go Math textbooks, that's what that expired last year. So we invested in that. Additional substitute teachers to cover those open
Okay.
positions. Yes.
I got it. Thank
And
you.
those were the big items in that 10.8 million. There's a lot of little stuff that goes into it too, but to list every single budget adjustment down is, that would be the weeds. So we like to highlight the bigger things, the bigger items.
I appreciate that. I'll call you with the weeds stuff. No, I'm just playing. I won't. I won't do that.
Join the finance committee.
No, I'll just ask you.
I have a couple questions, and maybe I'm just not seeing things correctly. So looking at overview of budget amendment number 1, looking at slide 3. Okay, so we've got our adjusted audited fund balance. We're basing this off of $33.4 million. Got it.
Mhm.
We're saying that we're on target to spend about 7.3 million of the 10 million we said we were going to set aside for this fiscal year. Got it. And with the increase in staffing, increase in revenue, decrease in staffing, with some increase in expenditures, we're thinking we're going to add about 2.6 million, which gives us a budget amended fund balance of $36.1 million. Got it. Then when I look at the same information on slide 7, it's not exactly the same information, so I'm getting a little bit confused. So when we look at slide 7, you showed us how we got to the 33.4 again. Got it. But then the numbers here for increase in expenditures and increase in revenues aren't the same that we saw on slide 3. So I'm just a little confused.
So that 2.9, if you go back to the adjusted costs to adopted budget slide, page 5, that's the subtotal at the bottom, the 2.9. So summarizing that page and that line. So this one just further summarizes, this is the change in expenditures, this is the change in the revenues.
Okay, so increase in revenue is staying at the 5.5 million.
Mhm.
I'm just getting more detail on the increase in expenditures, which is why it's 2.9. And
So the last page is simplified out. And that on slide 3, it's broken down more how to get to the 2.67 million and then how to get to the to get to the 5573 increase in revenue. And then on slide 5, your adjusted cost of 2.9.
okay, I totally get how slide 5 works. I think I'm just probably a little bit confused about why it's not the same number that she was on slide 3.
On slide 3,
Yeah.
let me go back to that.
Where is that 2.9 incorporated in slide 3? I guess that's my question.
Okay. In slide 3, it's the decreases to staffing and the increases to discretionary costs.
So it's a mixture of both of
Yeah,
those.
two.
I'm seeing, and then I'm seeing the breakout of that in slide
Correct.
5.
Yep.
Okay, it's a little bit confusing, but I see what you did there. My final question is the 171 FTEs worth of vacancies. Where does that put us compared to other years? Ish, and that's fine if you need to get back to us.
I would have to get it
No,
to
it's
you.
fine.
But that's something we can definitely pull
Sure.
and let you know.
I recently saw in the department I work in, 2 years ago, we had about 200 odd vacancies. This year, we're sitting at 590 vacancies. So when I saw that number, that was a huge leap. 171 may be higher or lower, so I was just curious.
Yep, absolutely. We'll pull that.
Thank you.
The one thing I can add, which at least is numbers that we do have, is the fill rate is well over 90%, which is higher than I think it's ever really been, which at least says we're able to have adults in front of kids much more than we ever had in the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years. But we'll get you the exact numbers because it'll also be a good number to hold ourselves accountable to. So I really appreciate it. But, at least the positive thing we can say is we know we were filling those positions at a much higher rate than we've ever really done before. So even before COVID, honestly, which is interesting. So.
I just want to piggyback on that and say how much I appreciate the rolling report on these vacancies. That's something, a question that I've been here for 6 years, and that question would come up often. Like, how many vacancies are we talking about and how did that compare? But now we're getting that on a regular dashboard, and I really, really appreciate it. And, you know, a year from now, we can ask that question and we'll know because we will have been rolling that report. So just thank you.
Madam President, I would just like to make sure I'm clear on the superintendent, because I think there's actually a gem inside of that data you just provided, which is that the fill rate is higher than it's been. It's my understanding from our committee yesterday, we've even reduced some of the pay we're giving, but we're still filling at a higher rate totally, which I think is super impressive.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Look, regardless of my own personal beliefs, markets seem to work relatively efficiently. And, what we have been able to do is go to the market and say, look, we care deeply about our children. We want to bring in talent. Yes, we're going to try to hire as many people as we can, but we also understand there's going to be a need for substitute teachers. We were able to bring in a ton of folks to help us get to that fill rate of like 92.3%, which again was much higher than even before COVID. But because of the market, we've been able to retain those folks with a lower salary, which actually speaks really, really highly to people wanting to be here. Now, of course, the hope is for any substitute listening, if you would like to turn into a full-time teacher, we would love to have that. We really appreciate all of your work. But I think that, to Trustee Liljy's point about getting it next year, what I can promise is we're going to do this a lot more than just once a year. We want to make sure that the board and the community listening at home gets to understand where we are on this. It's a journey. We're all in this together, but the more open and transparent we are, the more that we know where we start and where we're moving, the better. So I appreciate the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Liljy.
I'm sorry, I just have to clarify, as a recent sub who just got hired into a teaching position at the ISD, I just need everyone to know that Lansing pays the highest rate for substitute teachers of anyone around here. I just have to tell you that and the reduction isn't because we don't value people. It was, and it's still way higher than, I mean, I'm talking like double some of the other places that are paying subs. That's what we pay here. So it's still super high. Just want you to know that.
Thanks for that, Misty.
All right. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on in our agenda, we are to our report from Superintendent, Mr. Schuldiner.
Good evening, everyone. Because we already had a wonderful, but let's just say a little longer than normal presentation, I don't want to belabor the point too much. I want to say welcome and thank you to everyone. We're now in the second semester. I want to take this time to talk a little bit about that. We as a school district, of course, care deeply about academics. We want to make sure that all of our kids are learning. But sometimes there's times during the school year where we have to take stock. How are we doing? What is going on? And so the two things I want to just highlight, one, if you remember or care to look at our website at any point in any day, we have 3 district goals. First district goal, of course, is graduation. The second one is attendance. And the third one is enrollment. Why those 3 things are so important is graduation. That's kind of the sum total of, did we do a good job for 13 years with your child? Attendance is kind of a daily barometer. How are things going? What's going on? And then the third, and probably the most interesting and certainly unique to Michigan, is enrollment. In many states around this country, they don't have open choice. They don't have open enrollment. If you lived, let's say, in the Bronx, where my family is from, and you wanted to go to Scarsdale, which is a suburb that none of us could afford, you can't do that. You would have to pay $25,000 to go to that suburban school. In Michigan, it's different, right? Families have a lot more choice, a lot more flexibility. And so when we look at our enrollment is certainly part of the students that live here, but it's also indicative of families wanting to stay. And so those 3 buckets are the things that we're always looking at. Today, I want to talk a little bit about attendance. What's been really wonderful is if you look back this time last year, we were really being devastated by Omicron. We were being devastated by just attendance in general. And this month alone, our daily attendance rates are well over 10% higher than last year. That's incredibly significant. significant. Have 10% higher attendance, kind of year over year, is almost unheard of. Now, look, certainly COVID made it difficult, but what we're also seeing is that things like moving the high school students towards CATA have not in fact negatively impacted attendance. It seems to have positively impacted attendance. What we're seeing now is by doing that, then there's a trickle effect to the busing, so that there's more buses for our K-8 folks. And so I just want to really thank the community that the kids are coming to school much more than they have. And that really is indicative of saying, hey, look, we value what's going on here. And that's really powerful. And as you know, the older the child, the more they have a say of if they show up or not. A 5-year-old really doesn't have much of a say. But, you know, the idea that you have a much higher attendance rate than last year, I think is really wonderful. And so I'm really proud of taking stock now at the end of this first semester to say, wow, we're getting there. Now, are we at 85% attendance where I would like us to be by 2025? No, we are not. So we certainly still need to work diligently at transportation, at making a value add that every family and every child wants to come every day. And of course, like I always do, I'll read the numbers in a second about the gas cards and the CATA cards and the buses. But again, I want to thank the community and highlight to the board that this semester we've really seen a jump from last year. The second that I want to talk about is graduation, but really as part of that credit attainment. And this is where I really beseech everybody in the community. If you have a teenage child, the following conversation might seem common to you. How was school? Fine. You did all your work? Yeah. Everything okay? Sure. And that's it. Right? Now, I appreciate that that is how teenagers work. But what I really want to make sure is that our job as educators, our job as family members, our job as the community is to really trust but verify. Let's make sure that the kids are doing their work. Let's make sure that they're getting their credits. Let's make sure that their GPAs really are what they say they are. And we as a school district have to do a much, much better job in helping families be able to look at classes, look at grades, look at credit accumulation, and know. So it's something we're working on deeply. But I just ask that, all of the families, now that this semester is over, go have a conversation, ask for that report card, look at how the child is doing. If you have a third grader, let's see how that kid's doing, right? Let's look at the attendance. Let's look at, the grades. Let's look at the work, because the only way that we can move this district forward is by having that really honest conversation about where our children are. And it's a nice time now at the end of the semester to say, hey, let's take stock. Where are we? And so, I thought I would take this time to really just ask everybody in the community, talk to your children, talk to your community, talk to your family. Where are you right now at the end of this first semester? And, let's see. And if you have questions, call your teachers, call your parents, call your principals, because we're certainly here to help you. But again, whatever the school does in terms of sending this all out, we want you to read it. We want you to engage with it. We want you to play around with it and ask questions, because the only way that we're going to move this district is if everybody takes real engagement with that stuff. So the good news is the attendance rates are much higher. And I think this goes without saying, but whatever, I'll be loquacious here. If a kid comes to school, it's a lot better when the kid then not come to school, right? And so, you can't get that education unless we push that attendance. We really have to do that. And then the second thing, of course, is now that it's the end of the first semester, really have those honest conversations, talk to those teachers, talk to those principals. And that's really what I want to kind of leave with today, because I think there's so much good happening right now in this district. And I want to be able to empower families, empower the community to move it even forward. And again, as a person of my world, and one day maybe I will stop this when we solve this problem. But right now we have 2,910 families on gas cards with 34 waiting. So they'll get those soon. We have 706 students on CATA with 15 waiting. And we have 3,243 students routed with 232 requests unfilled. But again, all of those families have either gas cards or CATA cards if they want. Certainly it is our hope with our partners in Dean to continue to move these numbers to zero. We're trying really, really hard to work with Dean to figure out the most efficient routing. But again, I just want to thank all of the high school families and the high school students by us being able to move, the high school students, which is in total about 3,000 students, onto CATA. We've seen attendance rates have actually gone up, and it's freed up our buses to be able to use with our K-8s. So with that, I really just want to thank everybody for their incredible support, and I'm sure there'll be some more discussion about some other things later today. And because we have a did you know, right, John? Everybody's favorite part, not listening to me, is John. Take it away, man.
There we go. So we have a video for you tonight for a Did You Know? This is going to highlight our program called Conversations, where Bob Colt will interview people throughout the district and throughout the community. And it's in our beautiful new studio that the board passed a few years ago. With that, TC Iran, go ahead.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Colt, and we're continuing our conversations in the Lansing School District.
The idea that we can teach people about these other paths and give them hope and give them purpose, the same thing the athletes need, give them a reason to get up, give them a reason to do well in 8th grade and create that forward thinking, I have this pathway, versus what happens in many communities, including this one, is we're talking to people who don't see themselves as college bound, and the system's really set up as a conveyor belt to college.
This program provides kids with skill training for multiple sports so they can improve their skills, work on working with their teammates, developing in that way. It's something that's going to be a great resource that's absolutely free.
What as a district, what as a community can we provide to make sure that these kids are doing everything and perfecting everything? And I think that's something that we also oftentimes forget. It's not just the school district, it's the community.
One of the coolest things that's happening here in the Lansing School District is that we are starting a brand new comprehensive CT high school in the fall of 23. So typically at the start of the year, we start out in the classroom. As much as possible, we like to bring our community partners and our industry experts in to work with the students to get a lot of those, foundational skills under their belt.
Thank you, John, and how amazing were our 2 new board members. They look beautiful, and we really appreciate all of this. So again, telling our story, having our narrative, having the community care deeply about what we do, we really are, I think, moving in the right direction. So with that, turn it back over to the president.
Thank you. Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Superintendent, for the report about the graduation attendance and enrollment. I used to have the principal used to say, you cannot teach an empty chair. Then for attendance, that is so important. Can you give us next time K-3, what is the attendance there? K-8, what is the attendance there? And then the high school. And maybe later on how we do it by neighborhood or how we do it by the schools, how it's affecting the student not attending, and then maybe doing a study how the school is doing to attract the students every day to come to school.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to share that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, now we're on to our routine matters, which brings us to our committee reports. First, I would like to invite Mr. Lopez to share our committee's report. Facilities Committee report.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. At our meeting of the 23rd, we reviewed the following bids, and they're listed on your agenda, but I'll go through them one by one. The first one was the bid number, SB 0050 Mount Hope demolition. Finally received the bids for the demo product. Talked about several things on there, but the recommended bidder is Thomas Trucking from Monroe, Michigan. I think you may have it in your agenda. You have so you see the amount of bidders that came through. Some of them, it was in two parts, and some bidders only bid on one or another, and not the two. So this was a combined demo project. The next one is the air conditioning installation package for Averill and Lyons, category 20. As you can see, we had two bidders, More Trosper and L.J. Trumbull, with the recommended bidder being More Trosper. The next package was the air conditioning installation for, again, Averill and Lyons. And actually, this was for the, not the air conditioning necessarily, but the wall ceilings and the preparation and so on and so forth. But it's part of that work category or package. The next one was for the air conditioning, again, for Averill. And this was for painting, the painting contract. We had the mechanical and plumbing, work category 27. Bidders was Plume and Gunthrop. Gunthrop being the recommended bidder. And the last one was for electrical category for, again, Averill and Lyons. And Summit Contractors are the recommended bidder for this project. We also talked about a couple of other things. We had an update on the Mount Hope design update for the school itself, the building. Pretty nice, if I may say, some of the things. I'm sure we'll be brought up to date altogether. We also discussed a little bit about the lawsuit from Blue Star. Finally, we talked about the solar project, a little update. There were 3 responses to a quote or bid request. And more info on this will come next month. But just so you know that those items were discussed and talked about at our facilities meeting. These items, the 6 items are here for approval, and that'll happen later on in the meeting. So that is my report for the facilities committee meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson?
Thank you. Was there a discussion with anyone about the completeness of their bid at that meeting?
Oh, of the what?
The completeness or incompleteness of bids at that meeting?
Yes, and I know that we had some really some discussion or a lot of discussion on that, and I would like to ask our superintendent to chime in because we did have it, and we have some folks that could answer more questions if needed.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to have the conversation about the bids now, that's fine. We can also wait for it to be brought to the table. But I mean, whatever you want. So, the one thing, just to preface all this, especially for all those at home or in the audience, we had a bond for $130 million. The board was able to choose a bond rep. That's Plant Moran. They're an incredibly well-respected organization. And so they kind of sit as our representatives for a lot of these things. And Mark Alexa, who is the kind of man on the ground, as it were, I think would probably be the best person to explain all of this. I'm also happy to turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, Christina Tokar, to talk about it. But if you're okay with inviting Mark up to the dais, whatever you would like, to discuss this. And I assume, again, I'm not really sure, but if we're talking about a specific bid, we're happy to do that. It's really up to,
I just think before we get to vote on the package, there seems to be a question about SB 0051, and
Right.
just would rather talk about that to
I-
figure out,
I'd be-
are we doing it all together or one by one?
Be happy.
You can separate it.
So, and this is, so technically the consent agenda, which is where we put these approvals, are is meant to be passed without discussion. It's meant to be a one motion pass. And so if we want to separate it, I'm fine with us having conversation as part of the committee report to talk about in depth about the bids recommendation. So I'm fine with us getting into that now if there's no objection from the board. Okay.
And I was hoping to preserve the ability to just do it at once.
There we go. Nope, that's fine. So there was a specific question. Did we want to invite staff to the?
So
Consider it.
Mark and Christina, if you don't mind coming to the board, thank you.
Hi again. So this is Mark Alexa with Plant Moran Cresta. He is our bond owner's rep. He's going to be able to go into a lot more detail than I can, but I wanted to at least make the generalized statement, and then I'll let Mark get into it. Is when we go through the bid process, we have everything laid out exactly. What are the specs? What is everything that we're expecting through the bid? And then we go through interview process and make our recommendations accordingly to what we find out during interview processes and what was actually presented during the bid opening. There was a discrepancy in what we were expecting to see and what actually came in through the bid opening from one of the vendors, and I will let Mark go into that.
So I'm assuming we're going to talk about the mechanical side. The mechanical bids that came in, we review those along with ownership, along with the Chrisman Company, who was the construction manager, and along with C2AE Stantec, who was our architect of record. So when we go through these post-bid interviews, there's a whole series of questions that Chrisman asks. We basically check the boxes when things aren't per plans and specs, or there are questions on that. There is a follow-up on that. So the question that the gentleman brought up earlier of this different kind of piping and whatnot, it was a what we call line sets versus a hard pipe. My understanding and our understanding of talking with the architects is that they expected hard pipe in that bid and not line sets. The question was asked at the post-bid interview if those would be acceptable or not, and they said they would have to go back and review that. So that being said, the C2AE and Stantec came back and said we would prefer to do hard pipe, as the gentleman said, but that was not what was provided in the base bid. In the commissioning spec, there was some question on that as well. So in complete open and honesty, we felt that Gunthorpe had provided a complete bid. We went through both post-bid interviews versus what Plunin provided, and that was decided upon as a committee. So our job is to, as Plant Moran, as the owner's rep, we don't make those decisions. We put all the information in front of ownership and the team so that you guys can make an educated decision. So I've been, just so you know, my background, I was on Chrisman's side for 20 plus years, and I've been an owner's rep with Plant Moran for 7 years. So I've done things as small as, a chiller plant, and I've done things big as Little Caesars Arena. So got a lot of experience, but again, it's not our job to say, hey, we work with these guys or whatever. Both qualified contractors, both well-known in the industry, and can certainly perform the job. I think the difference there is that upon first take or upon the post-bid interview, that information wasn't provided. What would typically happen in that process is that if you were to veer from the plans and specs, you would either put it in as a substitution request ahead of the bid and make sure that option was open to both bidders or to all bidders. And then the architects would either approve it or disallow that. So, or the other option would be is that you would offer that up as a voluntary alternate. So voluntary alternates are open up all the time. That wasn't how it was presented. Our understanding is that there is, again, and I'm not an expert in mechanical, got a lot of experience, but I don't pretend to be an engineer and expert. So there's definitely some labor savings. And when you do line sets or the annealed piping versus hard piping, fewer unions. Some say that's good, some say that's bad, versus the hard pipe. Plus there's the added labor of insulating that, because a lot of times the line sets are pre-insulated. So again, I'm not that expert. Perhaps C2AE and Stantec could speak to that. But again, we did also request that Plume provide a breakdown of what those additional dollars were. We were not given that. At least we did not see that. Perhaps Chrisman did, but we never saw that. So we never had an opportunity to see what that actual value was. Now, what we kind of felt in talking to with Chrisman is that once there was wind of perhaps, there were some discrepancies there, Plume did come back and say they would, for lack of better words, eat the cost. So, and that's fine. And then again, we put that out there, and it's up to the district to choose to do what they want to do and how they want to respond. So again, we put that information out there. We just try to make sure that everything is clear, open, you understand the steps, and you understand how those numbers came about. Again, we felt that Gunthorpe had a complete bid. They checked all the boxes, and there was, again, some discrepancies with Plume. And that's why Chrisman henceforth recommended Gunthorpe over Plume. So that's probably more information than you wanted. That's the detail you requested. But, again, these things happen, and it's a very competitive environment out there. And we certainly don't want the district to spend more money than they need to. But we also want, we always say that there's a big misnomer in the education world, right? That you have to select the low bid. That's not the truth. And that's not how Michigan law reads. Troon can speak to that too. But my understanding, say, I've been doing this a long time, it's the lowest qualified bidder. So we want to make sure that you are getting the lowest qualified bidder that can perform that service, and that you're getting plans and specs per what the architect has requested. So again, that's kind of it in a nutshell. If I can answer any other questions, I'm happy to do that.
I value thoroughness, so I appreciate that.
Sorry, sometimes I talk fast.
So your estimation of the result of this is that that plant recommended to the district who chose the lowest qualified bidder.
So again, it's a team that recommended, not just plant. I just
Sure.
want to say.
Yep.
So again, and we always look at the completeness of the bid. And what I will say was very, what we really appreciated is that it was a tight bid, $40,000 on that amount of money. And, it's not, one's a union contractor, one's a non-union contractor. That had no bearing on who was chosen, whether, I've heard some rumors of that effect. Again, and Ben will tell you too, he wants the best quality for his kids and for the district. There's never are you red, are you blue or green or whatever. It's just, is it complete? And did you provide for plans and specs? And can you, provide that service for the district in full?
So I just want to clarify that the recommendation it's a committee that consists of the district, the bond owners rep, the sinking fund rep is on that committee. So additional, funds when we partner with, then we've got our architects, we've got our engineers. So there's, and then we have board members also as part of the committee. So.
And I will say, I want to say one thing, in the public comment, it was noted that this was the only low bid that was not chosen, and that's not true at all, because if you look at the demo and abatement, I think we went to 4 or 5. Chrisman went to a great length to make sure those demolition bids and abatement bids were complete. There was folks that had, I'm not going to mention names, but there was bidders that had current claims out there against their companies and had violations with OSHA and MyOSHA and those things. So again, it's not about the little dollar. I mean, we certainly don't want to spend dollars or force the district or ask the district to spend dollars where they don't need to, but it's got to be complete, and we got to make sure those companies are safe and whatnot. I'm just talking about that. There was, again, I think we were 3rd or 4th bidder. Thomas Trucking was to get there. It took quite a while to get there before we found a complete bid.
Thank you. I share your opinion that 40,000 on $1 million is not that much.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of money and
no, it's a lot of money aggregately, but we rarely, in my world as well, I rarely see that close of a.
I mean, just so you guys know, I'm also working on Grand Rapids Public Schools. A similar thing again. I had another upset mechanical contractor. It was $12 million in mechanical, and that they were separated by $55,000. And the folks that didn't get it were upset. But that's, again, the other contractor was complete. Everything was laid out. And again, we do this all the time, and we have to present information. It's kind of like with people in law, right? Here's the facts, and here's what we present. You guys can rule on how you want. We just put it out there, and we want the district to make that decision. It's not Plant Moran, it's not Chrisman, it's not C2AE. It is you as a district and with your committees and with the superintendent. So you're welcome.
Thank you. And look, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, in looking at this, some of the things we look at, right? We look at the base bid amount because we always want to see, did we pick the lowest bidder? If we did not pick the lowest bidder, why? Mark, to your point, it's our responsibility to select the lowest responsible and qualified bidder, right? So all of those other things are they under a lawsuit? Do we have prior holes or issues? That all plays into effect. The other thing that sticks out to me is sometimes like when there's a big discrepancy. So like, for example, looking at the abatement and demolition bid for Mount Hope, it's just interesting to me that one bidder came in at $221,000 and the other bidder came at $30,000. It's like, were you even bidding on that's always interesting to me. As opposed to seeing this one, when you're within $40,000, you see, okay, this is probably, it was a narrower margin that separated these bids. And one of the things that we rely on as board members is the expertise of our owner's rep, which is why we hire an owner's rep to help us manage and have responsible allocation of our funds. So all of that to say, we appreciate your explanation and time this evening.
Happy to help where we can.
So, yes, I'm glad we had this discussion because it's similar to the discussion we had on at the facilities committee. But I wanted the experts to explain it and that you would have that firsthand information. The other thing is for board members who may see the bidders and you see that they come from all over the place. We used to have a local preference that was since taken away by the legislature. So now local bidder is all of Michigan. So when you see bidders that are not local, let's say Tri-County area, they are still local in the eyes of the state. So if there's any question, ever any question about that, why we don't hire local? Well, we do hire local, according to the definition of the state of Michigan. So, and I know I get that question asked a lot, but it's slowly, being understood that as far as the school district and school matters, the local bidder is anybody in the state of Michigan. If we cross the state lines, then it's another question. So that's my report, Madam President.
It's more just for the people in the back, want to remind everybody that these dollars that we're talking about can only be spent on facilities, right? So they can't be spent on salaries or offsetting any other educational or instructional costs. We are only allowed to spend these dollars on these kinds of projects. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a very comprehensive facilities committee report. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next committee report, you're still up, Mr. Lopez, on the premise committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The Promise Board met on January the 19th, and I'll just highlight a couple of the items that came up. There were new members added to the board. A new Promise Foundation board member is Jessica Benavides from the Lansing School District. Okay, so we want to congratulate her on that. And I'll say that she did make a very good impression as she spoke on that day to the board and with the board. Okay, also for the Promise Zone Authority, we have a new member, Lloyd McPartlin from Olivet College. I think he's the deputy superintendent or something like that. Anyway, he's a vice president at the college. So those are two new members added. I also want to let you know that to date we have the Promise has handed out 1,600 plus scholarships to graduating folks from the Lansing School District, which includes also Catholic Central and other private schools within the school district. Okay. Additionally, we our text capture, official text capture was $1,250,887 for this year. Let's see, the LEA at Leaf our leave organization has joined Promise. We're still working on it. I think Dr. Rodriguez may have a little bit more because that's going to be part of the foundation group. But it was a good discussion on that. The other thing is that the big discussion at the meeting conducted by our the executive director was on readiness. What does that mean? And I think that over here, Jessica gave us her thoughts on what that should be, but there's many thoughts of what readiness means. So that's one thing that the Promise board talked about. The other thing is just FYI, the director will be evaluated in the next couple of months. So the Promise director, executive director. So that's in the works. Dr. Rodriguez, do you have anything on the
I think
foundation side?
Mr. Lopez did very, very good report, and then there will be more in the next meetings about readiness. But really, you did very well. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm. You have any questions? Otherwise, that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Moving on to our Finance Committee report, Ms. Logie.
Thanks, Madam President. The Finance Committee met yesterday, and I have the Treasurer's report for December, if I could read that now. The detailed Treasurer's report for the period of December 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022 is attached to this evening's agenda. The following are highlights of that report. The beginning cash and investment balance was $44,544,587. Receipts totaled $12,290,577, while disbursements equaled negative $21,459,503. Net interfund transfers totaled $873,333 in interest from fund investments to the student and bond funds, as well as journal entries to remove due from in all funds. The monthly transfer to the general fund for 2022/2019 bond expense was $1,477,625. The ending general fund cash and investment balance on December 31st, 2022 was $37,726,619. The general fund's cash and investments balance is $15,834,247 greater as compared to the same time last year. And now I'd like to acknowledge our donors for December, which our donations for that month totaled $27,478. So we'd like to thank the following donors. AGC of Michigan for our CTE programs. I wonder if anybody wants to talk about that at all. It was $2,500 for our CTE, and we really appreciate that. The Blackbaud Giving Fund donated for our Eco Lab as well as AAA. Could somebody tell me what is AAA? Well, we appreciate it. That is listed as the purpose of the donation. Do we have a discount membership to Triple? Anyway, but we really appreciate the Blackbaud Giving Fund. Marley Williams for Kendon Elementary School second grade classes donated $300. Thank you so much. From the Winslow Trust for Beekman Center, we were gifted $24,488, which is really wonderful. We also want to thank the Carl McLean Fund and Good Marketing for their generous donations as well. And Madam President, this concludes the December 2022 Treasurer's Report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Just keep in mind that the Treasurer's Report is an expenditure approval is on our consent agenda this evening. Final committee report, today is from Dr. Rodriguez to hear about what's been happening with ISOA.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. But our first meeting of the year will be February 1st.
As long as it means you can make it, crack of dawn. that's
It's one of the reasons I'm still here.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Next, we are on to our consent agenda for this evening. Our consent agenda includes the approval of our January 12th organizational and regular meeting minutes, the approval of the treasurer's report for December, which includes expenditures as presented by Treasurer Logie. And then it also includes the approval of the following bid recommendations. There's bid 50, which is the Mount Hope demo abatement and demolition, SB 51 for Averill and Lyons for general trades, Averill and Lyons electrical, Averill and Lyons mechanical and plumbing, and Averill and Lyons painting, and Averill and Lyons walls and ceiling repairs. May I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to the consent agenda be approved.
It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Ms. Moore. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? I'm just going to add an opportunity to anyone ask questions. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 7-0. All right, next we have a recommendation to go into closed session as pursuant under the Open Meetings Act to discuss a legal item through our mediation review. May I have a motion?
President,
Dr. Rodriguez?
I move the board go to a closed session according to the law. Thank you.
It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Ms. Lilji. Any questions about going to closed session? Didn't think so. All those in favor of going into closed session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 7-0. And at 7:23, we are in closed session. Okay, we are back in open session, which takes us to our next spot on our agenda, which is the approval of a couple action items. So the first action item before us this evening is the approval of budget amendment number 1 as it was presented to us this evening. May I have a motion? I'm going to say Mr. Lopez, moved by Mr. Lopez, supported by Ms. Logie. Are there possibly any other questions about the budget need to ask before approving? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor of approving budget amendment number 1 as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 7-0. Next, this is a new item for us, but you do have the information in your packet. We have the approval of a resolution to accept a donation of land at the Ebersol Center on behalf of the Ebersol Foundation. It's a 80-acre parcel of land that is currently, it's farmland. If you're familiar, that's right adjacent to the property. That was, okay, I made you stay, and then I'm gonna, you tell us, since we made you stay. Explain it to us.
Yep. So it's an additional 80 acres, which is immediately adjacent to the existing property. And it'll take our Ebersol campus from 158 acres to 238 acres total out there, which is amazing. The southern portion of the Ebersol Foundation land would become wetland and upland. So grass, native wildflower, prairies, that sort of thing. And then through succession, it'll eventually become hardwood forests. So that's what the plan is for that space. And then it'll allow students to learn about conservation efforts, land stewardship, and additional hiking path and trailways. And then the northern portion of the foundation land that's being donated includes a homestead, which will house both office and teaching spaces, along with the hay and pole barns. So, and then we would, this is from Ben Batwinski. He would also like that part of a campus to house a small teaching farm that could include a small set of animals such as goats, pigs, and chickens. Ben is very interested in owning more farm animals in addition to our horses. And then potentially an additional 8 to 10 acre tract set of land for a variety of row crops. So, yeah.
So currently that land is was being overseen by the foundation. They were leasing part of it and reinvesting that lease money. Anyway, the foundation has decided that it might be more beneficial instead of collecting the little bit of rent revenue that they were collecting by leasing it out, that it be incorporated and occupied and used for district purposes. So that's what brought us here today. Just so you know, we want to move forward with the execution of accepting the donation, but we would also like to have the Ebersol Foundation actually come and talk a little bit more about what they do. They just weren't available this month. And so they, believe it or not, have snowbirds in the foundation group. So they have some folks that are in Florida for a little bit of the winter, but once they return, we're going to have them present to the board. Dr. Rodriguez.
I think the board should send a letter of gratitude to the foundation, telling them thank you for the donation and the planning that we are using, and thank you to the previous members of the donation committee. And I hope in the future we can see how we can remember all this foundation with a name to these 80 acres. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. And I would also recommend that once the ground thaws, that perhaps the board travel out there to have like an official ribbon cutting or acceptance of where we transition the property line. I think that would be great.
And when we do that, we can have some recognition to the people too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions about the resolution to accept the donation of land, the 80 acres? All right. May I have a motion to approve? Been moved by Ms. Williams, supported by Dr. Rodriguez. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 7-0. And I also apologize for not saying this at the onset of us moving into moving into the coming out of closed session, but we need to add another item of action this evening, which is the approval of a resolution for the settlement agreement as action item C that was presented by our lawyers at Troon. May I have a motion to approve the resolution for settlement agreement as presented in our attachments? It's been moved by Ms. Williams, supported by Ms. Moore. Are there any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 7-0. That brings us to new business discussion item for which we have none, and then public comment. Any outstanding public comment this evening? No. So that takes us to our report from Secretary Announcements. Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. This Saturday, January 28th, at 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we will have get together, a retreat for the board members, and breakfast will be served at 8 o'clock from 8 o'clock. Thursday, this February 2nd, a great day. Regular board meeting from 6 to in the administration building. And then the school district professional development day, Friday, February 3rd, no school for the students. We are in the Black History Month, and should be the whole year anyway, but this is special month, which should be more sensitive, be aware, reading a book, educate ourselves, whatever we can do to move this community better, and remember all the contributions that every group, but especially African American group, had done to this country and to the world. That concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. That brings us to comment from board members, and I believe, Dr. Rodriguez, you had something to share?
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to talk with you today. Yesterday, I was invited to go to the student art exhibit that is going on in Michigan State Federal Credit Union. 17 high schools were there representing. Everett was there represented with 10 different pictures and I was taking notes because I only voted one time for Everett, but I was reading all the names of the students. Were there 2 9th graders, 3 10th graders, 2 11th graders, and 3 12th graders, total of 10. I had the names, and I brought here that you can have the names too. And also I took the titles of the painters, the painting that they have. And I was studying one of them when a lady and his daughter came to me, and they started talking. The name of the student was Maya Lodise. Maya Lodise is 9th grader, and her painter name title was Tender. Tender. When I asked her, why do you choose this title, Tender? What does that mean? And she said, that means emotions. How difficult for us is to take care of the emotions. How vulnerable we are to emotions. How emotions control our lives. And I was thinking in painters like Kahlo, Frida Kahlo, and even Picasso in Guernica, when you see the tragedies of the war, not only physical, but also emotional. We are in a war from the pandemic, and this student from our school find out that the emotions are so important. I had to thank the teacher, Pam Collins. Pam Collins, because our students, the first model is the parents. But many of us, we are what we are because a teacher, because an administrator in the building, because a counselor, because a nurse, because an aide, because security person because a volunteer. Then this extra work from our teachers, our faculty, everybody is what's going to make our district different. It was a great experience to find a young lady, ninth graders. It's incredible. And the maturity and performance that we should all are very, very proud. And I hope that all the teachers take that as a model, all of us, that we move to all our students to the best that they can be. Thank you for giving me this time. And if you want to see it, they are over there in the MSU Federal Credit Union headquarters. But I was pleased to see our students there. The same thing, I was pleased in the Martin Luther King celebration, see 3 students from Sexton to receive scholarships. And that is really count the students. And I think the sensitivity of this board and the superintendent should be in the community all the time. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. And as soon as you said we had representatives from Everett High School, I knew it was at the behest of Ms. Collins. So that's really exciting. And I'm excited you shared this with us because it just opened today and it goes until February 22nd. So there's plenty of time to get out there and vote. So thank you so much for sharing this with us so timely. Yeah. Oh, you got a preview. Got it. That's exciting. Okay. Well, us regular folks, we can start seeing it now. Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
I just wanted to just piggyback on Dr. Rodriguez about Ms. Collins. This is her, 18th year that she's done it? I mean, she's done it for years and years, and she just does a lot of work and invests a lot of time. So, Ms. Collins, thank you very much for doing what you do and taking our kids, show their stuff. They're good. I've been to any number of exhibits, and she's always there. And she's always been there. So thank you very much.
Just like I never missed an opportunity to share how Mr. Sinacropi would fix my glasses. Ms. Collins, 30 years ago, was my Head Start teacher, and she's the reason why I wear glasses. She gave me the eye test. Then I failed miserably and then called my parents and was like, come get her. This child can't see. So I have to thank her for that because now I can see. Any other comments from board members?
I do.
Sure, Ms. Moore.
I just want to share. I received an email from my colleague at LCC who also volunteers at the Advent House, and she wanted to commend the Fort program and the support of Rose Tap House and what we're doing for our unhoused students population. So I just want to give kudos to the Fort program, Cordelia Black, Superintendent Schrodinger. I appreciate everything that you all are doing. And I told her that I would mention this at our meeting. So shout out to the Fort program.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Ms. Lodi.
I just love this district so much. And one of my favorite things about it is its commitment to the arts.
Oh.
And I have never heard, a student trying to be dissuaded from following their passion in the arts because of the job market or, I really appreciate that. And if you indulge me for a sec, my dad graduated from this district in 1956, and he went on to MSU to get his BFA and MFA in studio art, and he's a professional artist. And then he came back to the district and became an art teacher where he was at Dwight Rich. And this past week he got a call. Well, I got a call from the executive director of Reach Studio Arts, and she said, hey, I think one of our professionals that's showing at our gallery was a student of your dad's, and he would really like to get back in touch with him. I was like, well, here's his phone number. And I didn't tell my dad. I probably should have asked his permission first before I gave his phone number. But he was surprised to get this call from his student that said, do you remember me? I was your student at Dwight Rich, and you treated me as an equal, and you looked at me like I had a future in the arts. So because of you, I became a professional artist, and I want to thank you. And I know the district is full of those types of stories. And I just love that we have those stories in the arts here. And because there are some people that are born to be artists, and it can be a difficult financial road, but if you follow what you're passionate about and you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you've got good networking skills and you understand how the world works, you can make a living that way and you can be a real gift to the world. So I just want to sing the praises of this district and its amazing support of the arts. We're the only ones around here that have a pre-K through 12 visual and performing arts magnet program. It's a huge commitment, and we're the only ones that have dance. And so just thank you, all of you. And thank you to all the amazing teachers, and love Lansing.
And talking about the art, the dance, the Senator Sarah Anthony Everett performance was brilliant.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And yes, incredible. And we had to show this by the students in the community, not just by our TV or whatever, by the students there in the community. You need to find places that our students had the honor to be there.
Yeah.
And we don't supposed to be afraid to show our students what the community is in front of the legislator, the business. I mean, these 10 or more paintings should be all over Lansing right now. And the library, in the Capitol, and in other places.
In here.
And here, and churches or whatever. But if we don't do it, who is going to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Lopez?
Yes, I just want to encourage my colleagues to take a look at the Michigan Association of School Boards Winter Institute that's happening in February 24th, 25th. You all have the flyer, but I just want to encourage you to look at it. And we've been talking about school security. So they do have that as one of their main topics. So it may be interesting for us to see what's going on elsewhere. And when we have that discussion more fully, that we have some background on what exists or what may be an option. So this is virtual. So if you want to check it out and see which it's Friday and Saturday. You don't have to do both days, but if you find a class that you like to attend, please check with MASB and also with our staff here, who may be able to help you get registered and so on and so forth, if you decide to go to.
Yeah. Can I just say that it's very helpful. When I first joined the board, I mean, I just dived right in. And so I would recommend it as well. And I'm still taking classes, and I'll continue to take classes till I'm not on the board anymore. Oh, I do want to take a shout out. Could I speak, Madam President? Everett Dance Company will be performing at the Detroit Pistons game in March. Whoop, whoop. So I want to just shout that out as well.
Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, may I please have a motion to adjourn? Been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Mr. Lopez, supported by all of us. Moved by Okay, so it's Rodriguez and Lopez. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Wonderful. At 8:06, we are adjourned.
This